Welcome everyone to the Four Esoterics. No politics allowed. And I'd like to remind everyone this podcast is being recorded. We follow Carlin's rules with one addition. Please be wearing pants. Let's welcome the Esoterics. Chris Buskirk will be here in a few seconds. Ben Boychuk, managing editor of AM Greatness.
Hello,
of course,
hello.
Mr. Esoteric himself, Louis Fine, and guest esoteric extraordinaire, star of soaps, movies, television, Kim Delaney. And you could find us at 4 Esoterics. That's the number 4, ESTORICS. Find us there.
Like you choked on it. You choked it. You choked it. You just got to let me do it, man. You just got to let me do it. Numeral 4, ESOTERICS on Twitter. On YouTube. Are we on Instagram?
We're not yet, but we are on iTunes. And
we're on iTunes.
Like us, subscribe to us. And if we're changed the format a little bit today, so to the people listening on the sidelines, if you want to write a comment, just raise your hand and put the comment in and we will get to it. Really the point of this is to just try to separate ourselves from the real world for an hour, take a break. And one of the things I was thinking about was great pilots. Of course, CSI Miami had a great pilot. The TV show Philly had a great pilot. The second season of NYPD Blue had a great pilot. Episode 1, All My Children had a great pilot. And so did Tour of Duty. No, but I kid, of course. My favorite pilot of all time, and I always remembered this pilot because it always stayed with me as a sports fan, was The Wonder Years, because it was the pilot that appeared after the Super Bowl in 1986. And they say it made 52 million men cry. And I just remember that episode being better than the show, Ben, but it just stayed with me for 35 years.
What was it that stood out about it to you? I caught on that show late.
I want to say I was 12. I was 10 to 11 years old when that show came out. And it was, Kevin Arnold when he was still cute, Fred Savage.
Right.
And Winnie Cooper. Everybody wanted to have a Winnie Cooper. And it was the first time I had witnessed or understood what the Vietnam War was about, what losing somebody in the Vietnam War meant. Mm-hmm. And there was a scene in it where I wasn't a Jet fan, where he had a New York Jet jacket on, and he held her hand on top. I think they were sitting on a tree and they kissed for the first time. And I remember it was just this touching moment about loss and hope and all of these different things. And I even knew at 11 there was something very special about it. And it just resonated with me. And much better than the show that was the pilot.
That's what I was going to say. So what was it, in your view, that sort of diminished the show? I mean, would it have been one of those things where it could have been one and done for you, or
it could have been one and done for me, except that Ben Stein appeared in 15 episodes as a teacher. So right. I'm happy for his sake. It wasn't one and done, but it wasn't that, and Kim could attest to this. When the greatest childhood casting was on 2.5 Men, because they cast that kid that he was cute. They made him always sort of stupid, so he didn't have to act. And the problem with childhood actors is that they don't always grow up to be cute. So Fred Savage at 11, the second he hit puberty, sort of, it didn't work. Same shyness and cuteness. He wasn't that good. I'm not judging his acting, but I'm evaluating it, Kim. He wasn't the greatest of actors to lead a show.
Mm-hmm. But the 2.5 Men, I think they did.
Oh, they
well.
Brilliant. The most brilliant
I still watch
casting
that. I've seen it so many times, and I still watch it at 7 o'clock. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yes, Ben.
Well, no, so I'd kind of like to ask Kim. Oh wait, did we lose her? No.
How do I do that? I'm sorry, that's my phone. I guess I have to turn it off on this thing too. 1 second. Sorry.
We can edit this.
I don't know how to do it.
You're doing great.
Yeah, this is fine. I mean, obviously, you're the professional actor among us with a long and distinguished career. You must have. I mean, pilot season for you, it means something different than it would be for us.
Yeah.
No.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So what?
Get your next gig for sure.
So tell us about. I guess maybe tell us about your most I guess agreeable experience with a pilot, and then the question that we really want to ask is, tell us about the ones that got away.
It's actually a great question.
Well, with NYPD Blue, I came on in the second season, so I wasn't in the pilot, the original one.
Right.
So it's just a classic show, no matter what. I just wasn't on the pilot. The pilot I did for Philly, that only lasted one season, but it really could have gone on. It was such a good show, and I'm sure it was financial. I was on my way to New York when they pick up all the pilots, and I just got a phone call late at night from Stephen Bochco, just going, don't get on the plane. He was crazed. So I'm sure it was something to do behind closed doors. But the pilot on that was really good. The show was really good. People really wanted it to go. It was a good cast. I was telling Judah the other night about this, one of the scenes. It was written, and you just saw it, Judah, so you might have to remind me because I don't know if I remembered it correctly. But there was a scene where Joanna Cassidy she's opposing counsel. Was she opposing counsel, or was she working with me? She was opposing counsel, right?
Yes.
And I think it was written for me to get my jacket and cover her because she got crazy about something sexual, like within the trial.
She went nuts and got naked.
She got naked. She just ripped open her blouse and I think, and help me out here because you saw it more recently than I have.
Kim ran up front and threw her jacket on her.
Did I my body or my jacket?
Yeah, with your body. You covered her with your jacket.
Yeah, with my body. Yeah, I was supposed to. I think it was written for me to get a jacket, take my jacket off, and cover her. But it all happened so fast that I couldn't quite do all that. So I just threw my body around her and wrapped her inside me. Which Stephen loved. It wasn't the way it was written, but it came out really well. And that whole show was a great experience. But that pilot it's a really good pilot. It sets up everything really nicely. Stephen's writing, of course, and
But what pilot? I think Ben's also asking, what pilot did you audition for that you wish you would have gotten? Was there any show that you auditioned for? Like you auditioned for Some Kind of Wonderful, you didn't get it.
That was a film, yeah.
Right.
Oh God, I have such a good way of forgetting those.
Or you just get everything you audition, or you just get everything.
5 minutes. No, I don't get everything. I used to just come in and go to the bathroom and cry for 5 minutes and shake it off and move forward. I'm trying to think if you guys talk about something else. I'm trying to think.
Because think about, because what I really want to know is, was there one that's like this pilot is really good. This is totally going to get picked up, and it didn't get picked up.
You were in one last year?
Oh, last year. We were all stunned. And even, my agent, my manager, they play everything close to the chest. So they were not, everybody was sure it was being picked up. It was a a current version of NYPD Blue.
Mm-hmm.
And it was excellent. And it was the studio, ABC studio had said, they held a date for me, that had me hold the date for the upfronts. I was back east and I had, my manager had somebody get all my clothes together and just send them back to me. They were so sure we were going to the upfronts. It was going to be picked up. It was like the talk of everything. We didn't get picked up. Right. Then they said it was going to be mid-season, and they did some rewrites and wanted some changes. And they actually wanted it rougher. They wanted it more like the original. And it's bizarre because we can't do as much now that we could do then. So eventually they held us till July and then they let us go. So everybody was stunned on that one.
Please elaborate. Hold on, Louis. Please elaborate on why you can't do as much now, why you couldn't have done as much now as 20 years ago.
I don't get it. I think we're just moving in the wrong direction,
Yeah.
And I know it's no politics here, so it's like
right.
Politically correct everywhere.
By the way, just so you know, that's not always politics being politically correct.
Yeah.
It somehow made its way into the zeitgeist of politics, but being politically correct has because
I went back and watched that pilot, waiting, because they were doing rewrites, and I'm talking to the producers, and they wanted to see more of where my character has been. They were asking for other things, and it quite never I don't know what happened. It just didn't get picked up. There's probably 5 different reasons why. But I did go back while I was waiting just to see the difference of the pilot then and what we shot now, because I wasn't in that pilot. And it was really good. And there were slurs, there was everything. I mean, nudity, of course, slurs, rough language. You just can't do it.
Yeah, what a world. Louis,
yes.
Go ahead.
Did you and Dana Delaney ever audition for the same role?
I don't think so. It was funny when we got a lot of confusion because when she was doing China Beach, I was doing Tour of Duty. So we're both doing war shows. So but she was the star. I was one of an ensemble on that one. So there was always a lot of confusion. That's where the confusion, I think, originated. But there was a show, and you guys have to help me out. I think it was God in Hand, or what was the show she was doing a couple of years ago, like maybe 2 seasons ago?
Louis, can you Google it?
I have
I know what you're talking about. It's called Dinner. It's called Dinner Theater.
No. But I was going to play her sister in that, and they just went a different way. So that was bizarre. Would have been fun, but didn't happen.
Okay, what about you, Ben?
Oh, and actually there was another movie that she got because I didn't feel like doing it. And it was one that my former fiance was producing, and I just was tired. I was just too tired to do it. And she ended up doing it.
Which was what?
So, anyway, yeah.
What was that?
She's too tired to remember.
I know. I have to I really should get my resume. It sounds awful. I just forget stuff.
Well, you've been in so many things. And
it was something that Al produced, when he was
do you remember the former fiance's name?
That I do.
She's too tired to remember. Ben, what about you?
Well, the one that remains sort of burned in my mind is the pilot to Lost, which was a 2-parter, 2-hour extravaganza, and was amazing. And that could have been a one and done too, although it would have left way more questions obviously than an answer. But it was so cinematic with the plane blowing up, and blowing in half, and the confusion and all.
I was going to start binging it this week, Ben.
Yeah, well, you should.
I'm kidding.
No, what I can't believe is that show's been off the air for 10 years. But it still remains, very fresh. And although I think a lot of people complained about how the later seasons kind of went off the rails, I was hooked. I was completely stuck and obsessed with it to the very end, and was a little bit disappointed with the finale. But that pilot could have been shown in movie theaters. I mean,
I'll have to go watch it.
Yeah,
I never caught on to that myself because I
never got into it either.
Yeah, my mom and my son used to watch. They religiously watched it. That was their thing together. But
it was really compelling, and the twists that they threw in around season 3, season 4, really, I think, re-energized the show. And the last season got a little weird, and the finale was a bit of a head scratcher. I remember at the time thinking that I thought I liked it, but as time went on, I kind of thought, this was a bit of a cop out. But the way that first season establishes the mystery and just reveals just a little bit here and there about what the island might be, and then as time goes on, it's fully revealed.
I actually want to get to that subject matter when we get back from the break, but I want to know Lewis's favorite pilot episode.
Sully. Yeah, we're talking about pilots.
Yes. Oh.
Yes.
I think that series.
Yes. It could have been. It could have been like a binge-worthy series of them getting on the plane.
Yeah.
And then them sitting down.
And I have a treatment out for Muhammad.
But in all seriousness, Louis, you're a big avid TV fan.
The only when I don't so much think of pilots I think of them as the first episode.
Mhm.
And I know that, I shouldn't say I know, I believe that there was a time when a pilot was at least an hour, sometimes two. And the only one that comes to mind right now is LA Law, because the firm, Mackenzie Brackman Cheney Cusack, which later became Mackenzie Brackman Cheney Cusack and Becker. It opens with Cheney. You don't see his face, but it opens with Cheney face down on his desk, dead. And it also stars Alfre Woodard as a rape victim and the victim of a gang rape, of all things. And one of the assailants or the accused happens to be played by Patrick Swayze's brother.
Don Swayze.
Now, I don't see, the name to me is irrelevant because I would just describe him as Patrick Swayze who had gone through a windshield. It's like the Baldwins. You have Alec Baldwin, and then to describe the rest, you just say like Alec Baldwin if he went through a windshield, or for Daniel Baldwin if he went through a windshield and then rolled onto a train track, something like that. So
and you have Stephen Baldwin,
right?
Yeah,
if
I got it,
he lost everything
each brother,
and operated a tow truck.
Each brother goes through a windshield, and then the next brother is spawned.
Right.
Yes.
Right, and which would be a great series about how this alien species propagates.
I think
they go through. They go through a windshield, and they bear some resemblance to the original, but obviously are scarred and not as attractive.
Write the pilot for that, by the way. But that also, Ben, I want to get back to you on that point because you absolutely have one of the funniest pilot episode stories that I've ever heard that got made. And I want producer girlfriend to take us to a break. If you just tuned in, you are listening to the 4 Esoterics. No politics allowed. You can find us at the number 4 ESOTERICS. Like us on YouTube, iTunes, like us all over, and especially on Twitter. Producer girlfriend, can you take us to a commercial?
Are you looking for the perfect cup of coffee? Why not try Single Batch Roasters out of Riverside? Call Eric, tell him this show sent you, and subscribe to his either full suspension bean or, for your pandemic needs, his stimulus package. Single Batch Roasters, a great cup of coffee.
I have to agree. It is a fantastic cup of coffee. It's one of the best coffees you'll drink, and we are discussing pilot episodes. Ben, you have a story about one of the worst pilot episodes.
Yes. It's a bad one.
That was made into a pilot. That they actually spent $1 million probably to make.
Maybe a couple dollars more than that. So but what makes it beautiful is the setup. So in the 90s, I used to write for a group, I guess you would call it a group blog called TV.org. It was TEEVEE.org. And at that time, there weren't too many sites like that for whatever reason. So the stuff was read by Hollywood types for some reason. And we were contacted by Paul Sims, who was making news radio at the time.
Most exceptional show. Yep. One of the most underrated shows ever on television.
Yeah, I love that show.
News radio.
That show.
Brilliant.
And so through a series of events, a buddy of mine and I got invited to the closed set taping of the season finale that year, which was their Titanic parody. And then 6 weeks later, Phil Hartman was murdered. But during that, we spent, my friend Phil and I spent some time hanging out with the writers. And one of the writers said to us, I'm telling you now, there's a pilot that's going to be made. It's going to be a series. It's going to be the greatest thing. This is the funniest script I have ever read in my career. It's called The Secret Life of Desmond Pfeiffer. Now, I don't know if you remember this show. It was only on for one season. It did make it, but it was about Abraham Lincoln's butler.
Was it on the WB?
I think it was either.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. Yes, and it was Chi McBride played Desmond Pfeiffer, and who was
Another
it?
fantastic actor.
Yeah, he's great, but the show was the antithesis of funny. It was so bad. It was all the jokes never landed. It was just terrible, and yet somehow it lasted one season. And yet the hype surrounding it, and because these guys, this writer on News Radio, which is one of the funniest shows of all time, is telling my friend and I, trust me, this show is super funny. You're going to love it. And to go from whatever was in that script to what made it to air, I don't know what happened, but I know that it was not in the same universe as anything funny.
Oh.
It was just lame. It was just lame.
Has anyone
flavored and
seen?
terrible.
Has anyone seen? Because I've heard. Now I haven't seen it, and I had to look up the name to remind myself what it was called. But of those who have seen it, those whom I know who have seen it, they speak of it in hushed tones. Look Well
No, what's
No.
that?
was a television pilot written and produced by Conan O'Brien and Robert Smigel, the latter of whom would become a primary creative voice for O'Brien's late night show. It starred Adam West. Despite being a personal favorite of NBC chairman Brandon Tartikoff, who had left that position by the time the pilot aired and was replaced by Warren Littlefield, the pilot was not picked up as a series. It was broadcast on NBC on July 28th, 1991, in a summer weekend time slot reserved for burning off pilots, which the network had passed on. The lone episode has since become a cult classic.
Have you seen it? Is the better question.
No, that's what I said. I haven't seen it.
You see
And
how
Lorne
I just-
Michaels was the producer.
But Kim could speak to this more because we had a friend who taught me about this. Usually when a network head comes in, a new network head, they want to get rid of pretty much, and they won't pick up a lot of what his predecessor had. They'll just like get rid of it, start with a new slate. And apparently Kim didn't agree with me because we lost her video. And but a lot of that oftentimes enough happens where that occurs. So we are waiting for Kim.
What was the show ostensibly about, Lewis?
Sorry.
After I close the window,
I thought you would have had a sense of it.
No, here we
Yeah,
go.
I also so that's why you're the esoteric. But Kim, that often happens, right? A network executive comes in, he gets rid of some of the old stuff. Or was my friend
I
giving me?
think they want their own shows. I mean, everybody wants their own thing. Even when a different producer comes in, or a different writer, they want to write a new character on because it's all about money later on. I mean, it's about the storyline too, but if you create it, you get more money. So if you create the character, if you create the project, it's all like the creation of. So everybody wants their own.
Well, this is why I think this pilot, I can understand why, just having read the 2-sentence summation of the plot, I can see how it is a cult classic. A washed up TV action hero who at the peak of his career was ceremonially deputized by local law enforcement, falsely believes he can solve crimes in real life. His student, Jason, played by Todd Field, becomes his sidekick.
It almost sounds like the Steven Seagal story.
Yeah, lawman. I have a story for you about that. I was at.
Let's welcome Chris Buzzkirk, publisher of AM Greatness. But yes, get to your story. Go for it.
I was with a now frenemy at the departed Barney Greengrass restaurant atop Barney's, the original in Manhattan, and my now frenemy had worked on the Keenan Ivory Wayans show, and he remembered her. After our lunch, we went up to his table. He introduced himself to me, and I said, "Listen, I have a question for you because I have fallen into a YouTube wormhole where I've been watching for the last 2 weeks Steven Seagal clips. I didn't look for them. They found me. And I know you were in the Glitter Man with him." I said, "What's the story with Lawman?" And he said to me, I'll never forget this. He said about Steven Seagal, "You know when they give you the key to the city it's not really the key to the city. But Steven Seagal thinks he's actually a cop. And when we made Glitterman, for any of the fight scenes, there'd be no choreography. They'd bring in a stuntman, and Steven Seagal would proceed to beat the shit out of the guy, to the point at which a stuntman would raise a fist or start screaming at the director, saying, "What the hell is going on? This guy is."
But that sounds like
crap out of me.
That sounds like every Steven Seagal movie. And welcome, Chris Buskirk. You have to turn your audio on, unless we could just stare at you and enjoy the beautiful image. But we are discussing Great Planet Lewis. That's a very funny Steven Seagal story.
Well, what's the most interesting thing about Steven Seagal that doesn't seem to have been mentioned? He's a Russian citizen and was welcomed as a citizen by Vladimir Putin.
I also had a colleague who was his personal assistant, who called him, I kid you not, Double S. And when he arrived 2 hours late for a meeting that had since been canceled because he was 2 hours late, en route in the studio furnished limousine, he was popping, or rather squeezing, power goo. Remember that when there were power bars, but then they came out with the power goo? And he was chasing it with whiskey. So when they got to the studio,
that's what it says on the directions on the pack.
Right, 2 hours late, and no one was there. She said, Double S, sometimes being early is a sign of power.
And just for the record, Steven Seagal, if you ever do watch this, Larry Klayman is our lawyer. So don't dream about suing us.
Double S.
So Chris, you just joined in.
But Judah, is Larry licensed to practice in Russia? Because that's where the lawsuit will take place.
He has convened citizen grand juries around the world.
And but Chris, you just joined in. We're discussing your favorite TV pilots of all time. Go for it.
The Rockford Files. That's easy.
Oh man,
that's one I saw.
100%.
I did too. I watched it. I watched the pilot as it was being aired. I mean, I was hooked.
I'm gonna bring it back to Russia. So the former stuntman, he's now in his 80s. I believe his name is William Smith, who was in Conan the Barbarian. I almost said Conan the O'Brien.
Yeah.
He is fluent in Russian. And he's played many a heavy. He played in the Any Which Way sequel. He played, remember when they have that shirtless fight in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and he's the guy with the mustache, and he points to Clint Eastwood after he's broken his arm, and he says, "It's broke. He can't fight. It's over." It's that guy. You've seen him in everything. And he's in the pilot. Sans mustache.
He's in the Rockford pilot.
Yes. In the bathroom, Rockford
gets beat
knowing
up.
That this guy's gonna beat him up. Yeah. He beats him to the punch, literally, and finds out what's his deal.
He was in everything for 20 years. He's one of those character actors.
I'm on his Facebook fan page. I belong to it. I believe his name is William Smith.
Chris,
he was in. I really liked him in Men in Black.
Was he really?
Waiting for it.
Oh
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm on delay on both of you guys. But Chris, you came in late and you came in strong with the Rockford Files. Kim's favorite pilots were everything she's been in.
I also like Ray Donovan.
Yeah,
that's a good pilot. Have you seen?
Oh, that's a very good.
I'm watching it. Then I went back and watched the pilot again.
That's a good call. Yeah.
I've got a question for Kim because this also relates to Producer Girlfriend. Stephen Bochco, you worked with him. I talked about LA Law.
I was in LA Law for thing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I worked 5 different Stephen shows.
But the greatest Stephen Bochco pilot,
Cop Rock.
Cop Rock.
Yes. Hey, listen.
I kid you not. When I saw it, I was like, "This is brilliant." When the jury got up and sang the verdict, I'm not joking. I was like, "This is brilliant. This is brilliant." What was it? 3 episodes?
Yeah, let me tell you something. If you went by batting averages, Stephen Bochco probably has one of the best batting averages of all time as far as getting stuff aired and lasting on TV.
Stevens, Bochco, and Jay Canal.
And he wrote the first. He also wrote the second. It was the first episode, really, of Columbo: Murder by the Book, which was directed by Steven Spielberg. It was the one in 71, not the one in 67. But getting back to it, we're talking. Somebody brought up an interesting point when we were writing back and forth. Oh, producer girlfriend, what's your favorite pilot, by the way?
I've got a few.
Then your favorites.
Of my favorites. The first one, which I think is just a really well constructed pilot, is Cheers. You know who everyone is. You know the dynamics right off the bat. You know the location. It's a really well constructed sitcom pilot. But my 2 favorite of all time would have to be the pilot of The Newsroom by Aaron Sorkin, which you start off on just a normal news day and you later find out there's a giant oil spill in Louisiana and they break the news. And it's just very well written. And the other one, which I think is just fantastic, and I'm always sad because the season kind of ended on a low note, but the pilot of Freaks and Geeks is just wonderful. And if you haven't seen it, they go to like the school dance at the end and they play Come Sail Away. And it's this young, nerdy kids' high school fantasy comes true in the pilot. And it's just, it's so nostalgic and so sweet.
That's Ben's example, by the way, a perfect example of very similar to the Wonder Years, but Ben's example of a show that could have been a movie. Freaks and Geeks probably would have worked much better as a movie than it did as an episodic television show, because you're right, the pilot was absolutely brilliant. Which goes to another thing I want to ask Ben, Kim, everybody around is with you, Kim, you were on shows, right? So, and Ben, you brought up Lost, and that was really pre the days of it started with DVRing, but pre-binging, a show could sit with you for a week.
Oh, right.
We've lost the ability for shows to sit with us. It's like all of a sudden we're watching 10 episodes and you lose context, you lose the feel. Has Netflix really ruined a pilot episode or watching a show for 5 years?
Here, let me make one point about that, and then I'll turn it over to the rest of the panel. I think where binge watching works best is for episodes that are short. So like I just did seasons 1 and 2 of Barry a couple of weeks ago.
Barry's great.
Barry is great. And they're all
producer girlfriend can't stand the actress.
Oh, she's terrible.
Stand.
Yeah, she's really you really do love to hate her, but I got through both seasons in a couple of days because 8 episodes, sub 30 minutes.
That's a good point.
Movie.
Yeah.
In that case, there was another one on Netflix called the End of the Effing World, which came out of Great Britain. Same thing. I think 8 or 9 episodes, all around 30 minutes each. So it played like a movie to me. And
I'll tell you where it was a great pilot, because it had different music for the first. No, big series. It had different music for I don't know if it was for just a few episodes or for the first season. The pilot to Magnum PI.
Amazing! I was watching it the other night. I got to be honest. The other night, I spent $6 to get the CBS, season pass. But Magnum's on Amazon Prime, and it was an amazing first couple episodes. Those first 2 episodes, Lewis, were really good.
Do you know how good that series was? So 2 things. One, I want to vomit knowing that the Abortion, that is the remake, was just renewed for a third season. I thought the thing would last a week.
I thought the same thing about Hawaii Five-0, and so obviously,
well, we know about that. Yeah,
I'm a little off on my predictions, but you're right. You're right.
I've never seen the remake. I have no desire to see it.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this: as a kid, and this is like when your world is shattered, especially if you're a kid. It's like your uncle molesting you or exposing himself. When I learned that John Hillerman wasn't English, he was a Texan.
Yeah. And sometimes he played a Texan on the show with his half brother, played by Jonathan Hillerman. So
and imagine my surprise years later when I see Chinatown for the first time, and there's John Hillerman.
Huh.
But I think I learned as a kid that he wasn't English on, of all shows, that infotainment spectacular known as Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
I have to agree with you. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to the Four Esoterics. Caroline McCoo. I love that name. Said newsroom was phenomenal. So she's agreeing with producer girlfriend. I'm sure a few of us in here might disagree, but that would be for a whole other episode and a whole other venue. You're listening to the Four Esoterics. It's at the number 4 ESOTERICS. You can find this on iTunes, YouTube, Twitter. And Ben, you want to take us to a little commercial break?
Sure, why not? You can also find us on American Greatness from time to time. Visit us where we're not supposed to be talking about politics on this show, but certainly if politics is up your alley, you'll want to take a look at American Greatness every single day. We publish 7 days a week, where you'll find writers like Conrad Black, Julie Kelly, Christopher Roach, Victor Davis Hanson. And don't miss Liz Sheld's Morning Greatness, which is a often irreverent roundup of the day's most important stories. You can find us online again, www.amgreatness.com.
Thank you for that. And welcome back to the Four Esoterics. Of course, our guest esoteric extraordinaire is Kim Delaney. And Caroline McCoo writes ER's pilot and House of Cards.
House of Cards, the first episode of the first season is awesome.
It's like Dexter, but Dexter was an amazing pilot too.
Dexter, one of my favorites as well.
Lewis, I want to bring up something you just brought up and ask this to Kim. And it's this: you brought up, Kim, you're in the business. So when people aren't in the business or they're not, it sometimes is very jarring to them when they see an actor and then they see him in a different role. So for me, when I saw Jerry Lewis, I was raised watching him in The Bellboy on Sunday mornings. And then all of a sudden I saw him being kidnapped in The King of Comedy.
One of the greatest Scorsese films and the most underrated and overlooked
ever. But do people, when they meet
Sandra Bernhard was amazing in that.
Yeah, Jerry Langford. Jerry.
But Kim, when people meet you, do they think, are they able to disassociate you from the parts you've played? You know, because, you know, Jenny Gardner, right, was very sweet. You're very sweet. You were a tough cop in NYPD Blue. You know, you on Army Wives, you play. You know, there's a certain. Are people able to? Do they think you're the character, or do they?
I think for a while they do, especially my first job on My Children, which is one of the reasons I didn't want to stay on there too long. I just did my first contract, which was 3 years, and then I wanted to do other stuff, so I didn't get into that. So I could do other things that would be accepted, because people do, you know, I mean, I've had people call me by my character name, whether it be Jenny or Claudia Joy or, you know, Diane. They do associate you, but they're also, well, it depends. I mean, I think they're also willing and want to see you in more things. Should probably ask, you know, I think most people differentiate.
The counter argument to that is the case of poor Anna Gunn, who played Skylar White on Breaking Bad, and I believe she got death threats. Her character was so reviled at times.
Yeah, there was a girl in All My Children who would get death threats because she was mean to Jenny, the good, you know, America's sweetheart.
And on Beverly Hills 90210, that singer, Jamie Walters, because he abused whoever he was dating, like Aaron Spelling's kid, got death threats for being like an abuser. He's like,
that does happen. For sure.
It's got to be very difficult sometimes.
I want
Chris,
to
what do
ask Kim because Kim has seen The King of Comedy. The best scene in that movie, which was inspired by a real life event that happened to Jerry Lewis. Do you remember what the woman on the payphone, and she asked Jerry to talk to her nephew Morris, who's in the hospital. He's given the woman an autograph, and she said, "Well, you know, I've followed your career for years. I'm a fan. I'm talking to my son. Excuse me, my nephew Morris. He's in the hospital, and he says, I'm sorry, I'm running late for an appointment. You should only get cancer. You should get cancer."
Oh, that's actually a good question. Where's the weirdest place you've ever been asked to give an autograph? Like, have you ever been in the bathroom and somebody says,
yeah, that's what I was going to come up. Yeah, like you'd be in the bathroom and they slip a piece of paper and a pen under there because they saw me. And I was like, "Can you just wait a second? I'll be out. I promise I'll give it to you. Just give me a second."
If they're tapping their foot, that's something else.
I was trying to think if I've been asked to sign bodies. You know, so there's different. I've been asked to sign like chests and stuff, also.
By men or women, or both?
Probably both.
Wow. We got to hang around you more. But that is very weird. I wasn't expecting the bathroom for people to slip underneath the door.
You're stuck. You can't get away from
guys, it's different. Guys will have the reverse where they'll be, I've heard men actors sharing they're at the urinal.
Yeah.
And somebody will say, you know, make a comment or, you know, say something. But with women, I guess it's under the stall. That's incredible.
Yeah. Under the door.
What do you want to say?
What?
You look like you were ready to share something. I'm sorry.
Who, me? No.
Chris.
Chris, what you got?
This is a family program. All the things I was thinking about sharing would not be appropriate.
But you did bring strong with the Rockford Files. James Garner, one of the most fantastic
I got another one too.
Yeah,
you know,
go ahead.
You know what was a good pilot was Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, that was excellent.
Excellent.
Love that show. Excellent.
Scorsese.
That's a good call. Now, here's the thing, by the way. I was thinking about this because Lewis was talking about 2-hour pilots. What it must be, and I'm sure, Kim, this has happened to friends of yours when they're in a pilot and then they get cut from the pilot. So the original face man on the A-Team wasn't played by Dirk Benedict. It was played by whatever the guy's name was. And that's got to be one of the most heartbreaking things when you're like casting something and you're like, I made it. You tell all your friends and then you're like zapped out.
I was the fifth Beatle.
I was nervous when they did when we talked earlier about the current NYPD pilot that did not get picked up. And when they said they wanted rewrites, I immediately thought, oh Christ, okay, they're going to go younger. They're just going to recast everything and I'm going to be recast. And your brain just works that way because this business is crazy. You know, you never know.
And one show we forgot to talk about, one of my favorite pilots of all time is Greatest American Hero. And, and, you know, and I was talking with Ben about this before the show. I don't know if you guys remember that show, but I think it was Stephen J. Cannell, right? Another one of his shows.
I think that's right.
And with Robert Culp and a young Michael Pare, where they're in the middle of the desert taking truants on a bus ride, and a Superman outfit falls in the desert, and he doesn't have the directions of how to use his outfit.
And you forgot the one.
What, Liz?
Don't forget, because in her prime, she was top grade.
God, Connie Selica. Absolutely stunning.
And who is she married to?
John Tesh.
Obviously she's a masochist.
And how do I know this? How he's a fantastic imitation of Yanni.
I was about to say that. Yeah. He's like a goy Yanni. Not that Yanni's Jewish.
And what are some of your worst pilots that you've seen, Chris?
I think they've all been wiped from my memory. Like it's how you can't, you don't really remember Extreme Pain. I think I've forgotten all the bad pilots.
And Ben, we know what yours was.
Yeah, I did want to put in the word for. I mean, this sort of falls between. This is one of these things where it's, you know, you can't argue with matters of taste, right? I loved a show starring Michael Madsen called
Oh, Vengeance Unlimited.
Loved that show.
How do I know this, Kim? How do I know this? And it starred, it co-starred, guest starred an old friend of mine, and who was originally meant to be the lead of that show. It was him up against Michael Madsen, and Madsen got the lead in the show. And yeah, that was a good show. Michael Madsen's a tremendous actor.
It was a good show, and it
was
only
on tour too.
It only lasted. I think the reason, and it was canceled for terrible ratings, and it really was kind of a ripoff of The Equalizer. But
yes, I was about to say that.
Yeah, but Madsen was a character called Mr. Chappell, who would, mete out vengeance, and the idea was you could either pay him $1 million,
Unlimited,
or Vengeance Unlimited, yeah, or do him a favor. And so the running theme throughout all these episodes was he would go and he would have these people repay him, do him these favors, and sometimes he would say, "Okay, your debt's paid," and everybody would be like, "Oh, thank God." So I don't know. I Madsen, and this was in the late 90s, I think, right? So
yeah.
1998 to 99. And he had a terrific presence, and the show just didn't work. But I thought it started out really well, and it just kind of crapped out at the end. So,
and I love that show you brought up, The Equalizer, which was one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
And it also goes to prove, what I love about that show is you don't need to be a brute to be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his name was Edward Woodward.
Yes.
Yeah.
He
I did that. I did that show too.
Oh, you did that show? It was a great show.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I don't remember. I mean, but I haven't seen it. It hasn't.
Here's one. Who played Edward Woodward's son?
Was it Billy Zabka?
Correct.
Jesus.
And thank you. And no phone in front of me to Google this.
And what kind of car did the Equalizer drive that was in the credits?
A black
Correct.
Jaguar.
Correct.
And it was an incredible show. It was an incredible show, but it goes to show you that my point being is you don't need to be a heavy. And that's what I love about the movies, the remakes. I usually hate remakes of movies, but I think Denzel Washington actually does the show justice. And but yeah.
And what's Jordan Belfort's father's favorite show in The Wolf of Wall Street?
Do tell.
The Equalizer.
I didn't watch.
He goes into a rage when anybody calls when The Equalizer is on.
And but getting back to Netflix. So you brought up the fact that you're right. So there's certain shows, but I think we really do lose nuance because it's like if you were to watch NYPD Blue and binge it on Amazon, which it's on, not to give any sort of but I believe it's on Amazon. You can binge all seasons of NYPD Blue, and if you watch it over like a 1 week period, you lose the aging of the act. I don't mean just you lose a certain thing,
Relationship,
a continuity. There's no you can't let the episode sit with you. Like I'm sure the episode that's Lewis's favorite when Dennis Franz moons America. And everybody saw his tush on TV, it made people think for a week.
What did I just see?
What
How can I scrape it from my memory banks?
Yeah, but it was also so talked about. There's no water cooler talk anymore about an episode. It's a water cooler talk about a season. Oh, did you just see the whole season of Stranger Things? It's never about an episode. And which it's like, Kim, you would be on Letterman, you would be on these shows discussing episodes. You'd be discussing a season. Mm-hmm. Now it's there's no time to breathe.
And discuss the episode. It's very true.
Go for it,
so
Chris.
I have a slightly different take on this, Judah, which is that when the shows are done well, people won't talk about an episode that way unless sometimes you get it like I don't know. If there's like standout episodes, people may key in on that. But I think people wind up talking about the characters more than the episode. So people wind up having that relationship with the characters. So instead of talking about like, I don't know, the new season of Ozark came out Instead of talking about
Great,
like whatever
yeah.
the third episode is, it's kind of about the arc of the show and like what how a particular character develops. So that's sort of the
So it's changed.
it's
no more.
Yeah, right. It's changed. And me, I don't want to put the. I mean, I don't know how to parse it, whether it's better or worse, but I'm not convinced it's worse. That I'll say that.
Okay, I'll give you an example. Lewis and I are fairly.
More. Sorry.
Sorry, Kim.
No, I was saying we used to talk about the shows more in the lines in the show and the writing in the show.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember when I was in high school, Lewis is sort of close to my age. And so, I mean, whatever. But when Seinfeld was on, I could not wait to get into class the next morning to talk about the Seinfeld episode the night before. I mean, we would break it apart. We would, just absolutely love on the show. And to Chris's point with binging, I guess that happens now more with the arc, like with the
characters or with the arc, and you get less of what Kim's talking about, which is that was a great line, or that was just a particularly great sequence, or sort of like I'm sure when you were talking about Seinfeld, there were little riffs that you really would appreciate and would look forward to talking about with your friends. And
right, but what I find odd though is you as a writer, wouldn't you appreciate more the old school way than the new school way, because you want people reading your stuff and finding lines in it and commenting online. That's part of writing, right?
When I did LA Law, I did an arc in that, and there was a line, and it was the first time it was ever used on TV that Stephen wrote. It was with Arnie Becker, and we were getting into bed, and I said, "Condoms are in the drawer," or something, whatever that was condoms. It was the first time that was said on TV. So that was talked about like for a long time. So there are specific things that the writers write that I think are, magnificent.
Kim.
And we lose that.
Yeah, but I wanted to be Lewis, but I wanted Chris, but you get what I'm saying? Like when I read,
yeah, I do, but I would think that I like the fact that that the way television's done now is that there's more room for character development, because I just like that element of getting deeper with the characters, and some of the stuff with the lines led to like sort of self-indulgence on the part of the writers, and which turned super cheesy sometimes. It's kind of like a lot of like those Schwarzenegger movies, which I know is different than episodic television, but it'd be like in Commando, it'd be like he kills the guy on the plane, it's like he's dead tired.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
or
like,
in Delta Force,
that line that
Chuck
people
Norris shoots somebody and he goes,
What?
sleep well. In Delta Force, Chuck Norris shoots somebody and he goes, sleep tight.
Right, that type of thing. There were people who were looking for that little hook line that would be repeated, but to the detriment of the character.
To the best of my knowledge, neither William Goldman nor Patty Chayefsky worked on those movies, so I'm not sure what you were expecting. Kim, about LA Law, do you remember when Benny Stolwitz, played by Larry Drake, a man of in the real world, the late Larry Drake, of presumed average intelligence, playing a retarded office worker? Do you remember when he was accused of rape and he was
Like
Corbin Burnson,
presumably average intelligence. We're not sure, but we assume.
Yeah, and Corbin Burnson and I forget who the other person from the firm that were representing him. His criminal defense attorneys. They had him read what the victim alleged the perpetrator had said, and read it as fast as he could, while maintaining the guy's, while staying in character as a, pardon the expression, a retard. And the woman says, "It's not him. It's not him. You got the wrong guy." I know this is going nowhere, but to me,
no, but it was. I know
great.
the scene. I remember the scene.
Yeah, it was great. Larry Drake also in
Dark Man,
right, with Liam Neeson.
Yeah. And
the other guy who's dead, who played a villain in so many things, bald guy, man of substantial size, and had like a kind of, pardon the expression, a Junos. So picture a muscular, bald, bulky man playing the heavy, literally, with a Junos. I can say that because my best friends are Jewish.
My mother loves your anti-Semitic rants.
What? Arabs are...
After shows, my mother is just so proud of me.
Let me tell you something. As an Arab, I'm a Semite too, so I don't know where this anti-Semitic stuff is coming from. But I want to.
By the way, you know something interesting you brought up, just for the.
I'm going to look the guy's name up now.
I just want to say something. Liam Neeson started out as an action guy, right? He was in Dark Man, and I think he was in Roadhouse, maybe, or one of those movies. Then he goes to Academy Award, and then he goes back to being in Taken and in every single action movie. But as we're wrapping up, so Chris, you don't see Netflix and you don't see binging as you're a binger. You actually love binging.
I like binging.
Yeah. So does a bunch of our fans. They're also, so I'm alone. It's not that I'm not a fan of binging. This all started, by the way, because of Lewis, because I'm a huge fan of Bosch, and I wanted to watch the 6th season of Bosch, and Lewis goes, "You're going to need." He wasn't lying. I had to literally rewatch 3 seasons because I forgot, because I had binged it too quickly. I had forgotten so many storylines and plot lines. And by the way, Mimi Rogers is fantastic in that. And
back in the day. So I've got the tripod set up. I've rented the motel room. Connie Selica has a key. Mimi Rogers has a key. Kim, you're always welcome, but I'm not going to involve you in this.
And Kim,
of course, but you're a friend, so I don't want to get you involved in this. But I remember the HBO TV movie. I think it was Heavenly Skies or Blues. Harry Hamlin plays the owner of a baseball team. Mimi Rogers is a sports agent, and he won't let Mimi Rogers' client, who's a woman and a great pitcher, play. And she eventually does get to play. This was the early years of HBO when they had about a dozen films in their library. And also, for those of you who have the time to look, the late actor's name is Nicholas Worth. His filmography includes 100 films, everything. As soon as you see his face, you'll know who I'm talking about. And
but I love those. Those are the best. You know, I asked Kim to watch a documentary that she hasn't seen yet, and I told Chris to watch this, and I encourage all to watch this documentary. It's called "The Battered Bastards of Baseball."
Oh, it's excellent. I did watch it.
Oh, you did watch it, and it's based on Kurt Russell's father, who appeared in over 1,000 episodes of episodic TV, and then he ended up, I don't want to ruin it for people, but I beg of you to go watch it. And you're referring to the days when actors could make a living being a guest star. You could watch 10 episodes of different TV shows in those years and see the same guy or woman in different episodes of different episodic or dramatic TV. And I don't know if that happens as much anymore, that you can make a living as a guest star.
Yeah.
Which is things that make you go, But one of the things I want to talk about in the future, Ben, is, and I want to really get Kim's opinion on this, not because of anything, because I bring this up to you because of Bosch. It's one of my favorite shows because it's age appropriate. You know, they Mimi Rogers is in it, Titus Welliver. It's okay that people have aged. And I don't know sometimes anymore, you know, you know, like you were talking about, they wanted somebody younger you thought.
Well, I was afraid of that. That's not
right. But I'm saying that was a big, that was a big fear of yours. And I don't think we give enough credit like they do in other countries. Because if you watch a lot of your English shows, they revere the I don't want to say older, but the older actors.
More mature actors.
Sorry, Ben?
More mature actors.
The more mature actors are looked up to. They're given it roles. They're not like thrown to the wayside like you don't exist anymore. They're still given leads on television shows like Doc Martin and other, you know, a whole other slew of shows.
Well, we have it with Jessica Lange, right? Ryan Murphy hires her.
She's the exception to the rule, and
she's the exception. I mean, I love her to death.
Her favorite movie is Frances, and starring the great Jessica Lange. And we are running out of time.
I don't think she acted in that movie.
And Caroline agrees with me again. Just look at Downtown Abbey, which is, a resurgence for somebody like Elizabeth McGovern.
Yeah.
And by the way, Caroline, I think, is the one in Australia.
I think she's in the UK.
Okay, so which so one of I forgot. Yeah, I forgot.
Well, I think 1 and 1. There's 2 Carolines, right?
Yeah, there was one for Australia, one in the UK. I forgot to bring up the Australian Don Bradman, the greatest cricketer of all time. And the other day when we were doing the after show, she's in Australia.
Caroline
is Australia. Okay, yeah.
And I was, but I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank everybody for listening. Ben, can you give us the closing points of this show, of pilots and all of that jazz?
I think what we learned is.
Thanks, Phil.
I think what we've learned is that television is, has its icy grip on our consciousness, and we'll never be free of it, because we were talking about shows that haven't been around for 30 or 40 years in certain cases, and yet they're very much alive in our minds. And so,
so I would follow that up with Kim. How does it feel to be in something like that?
Yeah.
In something like what?
A classic show like
that in 50 years people will still be watching.
It still holds up no matter what. Proud. I mean, very proud.
Yeah.
Grateful that I had the opportunity. And Stephen, at one time when I was just starting it, he came to the set and he goes, "Kim, you're going to know in 10 years how special this is." And I said, "I don't need 10 years. I have it now. I know how special it is." You just feel it on the set. You're doing something fabulous.
I love that, because I've heard a lot of actors say they didn't know they wish they would have known at the time that what they were working on was so special.
You could feel it. And even when I did All My Children, my first job, I knew nothing. That
was actually the last episode of The Office, by the way. I'm referring to the last episode of The Office when Ed Helms was basically saying, you always think the last thing was the best until you're at the next thing, and you realize how special the other thing was. But you actually in that moment realized I knew it. I was standing next to Stephen on the set, and I said, I have it now. I don't need 10 years. And Carol Burnett took us, when I was on All My Children, took us all out to lunch, the young cast out to lunch. And she, at like that Cirque restaurant, what's that?
The Cirque.
Is it Le Cirque? That's where she took us. And it was like fancy for me and all that kind of stuff. And she looked around the table with all of us. It's the, Darnell, Larry, that whole group of the younger ones. And she goes, "You guys have something really special here. I hope you treasure it." And we did. Like, we even knew in that moment that our group was really special. So I've been fortunate and grateful. And Chris, I want to ask you that same question now, because I'm curious. Do you realize as you started your media conglomerate magnet, did you realize you were starting something special? When you have the right people, I mean, this is like a huge cliche, right? But when you have the right people around you, it feels right. And you can get a lot done with not a lot of resource. And that's why I like working with Ben and with Julie and some of the other people. I mean, things just come together very, very quickly, and things can always be better. And I think we do ourselves a huge disservice when we have something that's really good and thinking like, it could actually be better, and kind of always looking at the grass is always greener. It's hard to get things that work right. And you should really treasure and appreciate the things that are working right, and run with them. And be in the moment, I guess, Ben, is the best point. The best way to finish up the show is live in the moment. Yeah. Enjoy the moment. And as I was watching, it's going to be on YouTube in a couple weeks. They were, Ferris Bueller Reunited, the great line from John Hughes is "Life moves pretty fast." If you don't, if you could finish that one off, Lewis. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't slow down, you might miss it. I thought it was, "You're still here? Go home." And I am paraphrasing. I want to thank everybody. Phil, I want to thank you for being our biggest literary, our biggest publicist. I want to thank Caroline, and in Australia, I am very proud to know who Don Bradman was. Like I said, the greatest cricketer of all time, Sir Don Bradman. And producer girlfriend, why don't you tell us what our Friday episode is going to be? To be announced.
To be announced. That's right. We haven't settled on it yet.
We have. Oh, that's the great thing about live podcasting.
Uh-huh.
And we haven't settled on it yet, but God willing, all of us will be here at noon on Friday. I want to thank everybody for listening. Louis, you rocked our esoterical world today. Kim, as always, beautiful. Good luck. Godspeed at the dentist. Ben, you look great in big wherever you are. And Chris, thank you for joining in, even if it was late. The Rockford Files was a great mention. I want to thank everybody for listening to that 4 Esoterics. That's at the number 4 ESOTERICS at iTunes, YouTube, Twitter, and of course, let's thank producer girlfriend as always. Great job, and thanks everybody for listening and watching us later. Spread the love. Have a great day.